Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Financial Dad podcast. Today's topic is a good one that I actually remember having the conversation with my dad about when I decided to become an entrepreneur, which is all about really that personality and what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And today we're going to talk about really the five, whether we call them skills, personality traits, five important things that every entrepreneur, freelancer, creative needs to know. So welcome to the show. Hey Dad, hey Hallie, how are you guys doing today?
Hey, Bridget, how are you? Hi, Hallie.
Hi.
Gang's all here. Dad, why don't you take it away with number one about mental toughness and just any thoughts that you have around personality type?
Yeah, okay. Well, I certainly have a philosophical belief that there is a personality type that can work on their own, start something of their own, develop something of their own, etc. I mean, I think traits of that personality type are certainly things like visionary, right? If you want to create something, whether it is an acting practice, an acting business, if we want to call it that, or publishing slash podcasting slash PR business, or a financial services business, you have to have a vision of what you're trying to do. So I think anybody who is, a creative or is doing their own business of some kind, entrepreneurial, they have to have a vision of what it is they're working towards, what they're trying to build. And that along with that goes things like goals and all of the aspects of what we would call a strategic plan to achieve the vision ultimately. But you have to have a vision. So that's a leadership quality, which is probably the second aspect of entrepreneurial thing. You have to have some leadership skills, because if the thing goes well, you may eventually have employees, and you may eventually have relationships with vendors and, third parties of various kinds, and you need to take the lead in managing all of that. So leadership is definitely an important aspect of it. You use the term mental toughness. And I would say, unfortunately, this is one of the most critical personality traits. Every entrepreneur is, in a sense, in sales. You have to sell whatever it is that your services are, your products are. Most of us can't afford to hire a sales force right when we start up some kind of an entity. So we are the salespeople. We are the sales force for the entity. Sales involves rejection, and rejection involves emotions, ultimately. Nobody likes to be rejected. There are ways of dealing with rejection. That's probably, another podcast for another day. But everybody has to be ready to be rejected. You have to be ready for setbacks of various kinds, maybe a large contract that someone said they're going to give you and they don't, or a part that you thought you were going to get that you don't. So there are always setbacks in any entrepreneurial venture, any creative venture that you have on your own. So you have to be able to deal with that. And mental toughness ultimately, becomes how you deal with that, your ability to shake it off and move on, your resiliency, which is probably, I would actually say, mental toughness is one way to describe it, but resiliency might be a more precise word for it, because it's essentially you have to get back on the horse the next day. You just got to keep on going. And that persistence, that determination that you're not going to let those setbacks stop you, those rejections, those negative events that occur. You have to be tough enough that you're going to continue on, and not only continue on, but not let it impact how you now relate in your next phone call, in your next attempt at things. You can't be down and glum and like, oh God, hi, how are you? Yeah, I feel like crap because, I lost that contract yesterday, but maybe you'll give me one. That's not going to work, right? I see Hallie like laughing hysterically.
Well, you're talking about rejection, and that's like 90% of the response you get as an actor is rejection,
Right.
because you are constantly putting yourself out there, and more than half the time you don't even hear back, when you're auditioning. So, it does come down to mental toughness, but I think even more than that, it comes down to believing in yourself and knowing, like you said, what your vision is of what you are trying to do, and trusting your own skills and the work that you've put into your business or your craft or whatever it is that your business is based off of, that you believe in that so much that that even if you thought you did really well at an audition and you never hear back, or you get a call back and you get so close to booking your dream role and it just doesn't work out for you, someone else gets it, you have to not let that affect how you feel about what you're doing. Like, you have to know your abilities and trust the work that you do, to know that when one thing doesn't work out, or when you do 100 auditions in 3 months and only book one of them or don't book any of them, you have to be able to trust that it doesn't mean, oh, I'm really bad at this now. Like, you have to be able to trust that it just means that you didn't book them. Like, seeing rejection at face value versus making it a larger statement about who you are, if you're any good at what you're doing, if anyone cares that you're doing it, being able to just look at it and say, okay, I did not book those jobs, period. Or I didn't get those deals to go through, period. I didn't make those sales, period. Doesn't have to mean, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this in the first place, or, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I need to go spend hundreds of dollars to like relearn how to do things.
You know what, Hallie? You can probably give us a pretty good understanding of this from conversations that we had with our friend Sam Scalamoni. Sam is a Broadway director, and Sam was kind enough once to allow us to sit in on auditions for I think it was a national tour of a very well-known musical. And we sat there and watched people come and go. And if I recall correctly, there was one reason why most of them were rejected that had nothing to do with the talent they displayed when they were there. Do you remember that conversation about that?
I think so. Yeah. And this is something you learn in school or in acting class, that the energy you bring into the room is really important. And the way that you interact with people, bringing yourself to the room. That's what it's called. When you go into an audition, the audition room, bringing yourself and bringing your energy so that people know what it would be like to work with you. And so that people know that you are confident in your own skills, because if you're not confident in your own skills, why should they be? If you're not confident that you can do the 8 shows a week and remember all your choreography and be involved in your acting scenes and not get vocally tired throughout the run of the show, why should they believe that you're capable of any of that? I feel like I can remember specifically one audition. I actually knew the person who came in, and I think his audition was fine. We had gone to school together, so we recognized each other, but his nerves came into the room with him so strongly.
Yeah.
Like it felt like he was afraid to be there. Like it felt like he didn't want to be there. It felt more like something he was dreading. And the thing about that is, we are so driven by emotion. That's like the first thing we notice about people is how we feel around them. Like, when you first meet someone, you might not even consciously be thinking it, but you meet them and you be like, oh, I feel comfortable with this person. I feel at ease, or I feel good. If someone walks into an audition room and they say, hey, I'm Hallie Smith, really excited to be here, hope you're all doing well, and you get started, like, you can feel from that person is happy to be there, they're engaging with you, and they feel confident, and that is contagious. Someone walks in and they're like, hi, I'm Hallie, and I'm gonna sing this song. You're like, uncomfortable. You're like, oh, like you don't, you feel bad for them. And you almost would rather just be like, I don't know, like give them a sweet treat and like send them on their way and be like, it's gonna be okay.
In a sense, what we're saying is you need to have the ability to project confidence and trust, and that you would be a pleasure to work with, good chemistry to work with. I always used to say that there are 3 C's to whether a client would work with a financial planner. The 3 C's were cost, competency, and chemistry. Is the cost fair, reasonable, a good value for what you're getting? Can the person actually get the job done, right? Are they competent to do what they're offering to do? And then chemistry. Do I feel like I'm going to work well with this person through a process, whatever it is that we're doing? And frankly, I think a lot of that applies to what you're saying and what Sam talked about. Just back on that day, I remember a guy who came into audition. He sort of came in as the character he was auditioning for, and it was like a very brooding, uh, internally conflicted thing the moment he walked in the door. And maybe he's trained for method acting, but I just remember the director's comment when he walked out the door of, I don't know where he's going with that. Like, I don't, like that just was not what we are looking for in somebody's audition. So yeah, how you present yourself, the ability to present yourself and project that competence, that competence, trustworthiness, that you're going to be a pleasure to work with. You're going to get the job done. You're not going to bail in the middle of something, or you're not going to be a problem. I think all of those traits are critical for anybody who wants to market themselves in some sort of a service capacity or product capacity for that matter. So that's definitely really, really important, I would say, for entrepreneurs, the whole group that we're talking about, visionary, creatives, etc. They have to have that ability.
But this, it reminds me that energy speaks louder than words sometimes. And like, as Hallie was saying, we're very attuned. And I've had very many times where I've had a call with someone and I'm like, I wouldn't want to work with them. It has nothing to do with their competency or their craft or their skill. And I really like the word that you use, which is chemistry. And I think that's important especially like more of a consulting, I guess, space where you might be working intimately with that person. It matters less if you're selling like a product or a good on Etsy. But it obviously does matter if you're auditioning for a show and they're like, oh, no, this is not the right fit. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
you think about
interesting.
it, auditioning for a theatrical or a film or a television show, you're going to go through a rehearsal period with this person. You're going to go through a production period with this person. So you're looking for certain things in that person, that they're going to have the mental toughness and the chemistry and the other aspects that we're talking about to get the job done and be a good team member in that instance, right? Fit in with the team and work well with the team.
We're talking about having confidence in your abilities and confidence in how you're going to come across. And I think when you are first starting out, that's really hard because you don't always have proof that
Yes.
what you're doing is good. You just haven't been there yet. So I think there is a level also of fake it till you make it in this,
Yeah.
and like trusting that whatever you don't know yet, you can learn as you go. That there's somewhat of a meeting in the middle, at least when you first start out, that you have some skills and you have some knowledge of how things work and you have yourself. And then you might have a lot of stuff that you haven't experienced yet, a lot of stuff you haven't done yet. But I think it's like trusting what you already know and then trusting that you are capable of learning other stuff on the job as you go and figuring it all out. I think that's kind of where mental toughness and patience meet.
And maybe some acting skill. You know, your first acting role is that of a confident, experienced, wonderful person walking in the door. No matter what you really are, that's what you're trying to project that time. And again, it's the same for someone who's selling somebody a service for the first time or something else, where they have to fake it till they make it, as you said. And so there's a little bit of acting skill for everybody, involved in this stuff. It's a good point, Hal.
So number 2 is all about time management. And I know, Hallie, you've had this experience too. when someone moves out of college, for instance, they have structure. They go to class, they have assignments due at a certain time. You have that structure. And I remember when I left my job at Yelp, I was 9 to 5 or whatever, 8:30 to 5 is when I would get in. I had things to do because my manager said, hey, this is what you're going to focus on. This is what the role entails. So when you go to entrepreneurship, freelancer, you're making your own schedule. So let's talk about time management, because I think this is one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs or newer entrepreneurs struggle with, even experienced people actually too.
Well, okay. So time management gets into several areas of mindset as well as skill set. On the mindset side, there are issues of discipline and motivation. I mean, in theory, if you woke up in the morning and you had nothing on your calendar for the day, some people might sit there all day and do nothing because there's nothing on their calendar, and there's nothing poking them, if you will, forcing them to do some kind of work, as opposed to, the 9 to 5 job where you have to be there at a certain time. There's certain work that is expected of you during this daytime that you have to get it out the door or get a project out or whatever it is. So when you are an entrepreneur and you're trying to manage your time, discipline and motivation are the first two parts of it. Discipline is really about, I'll just say it this simply, doing something even though you don't want to do it, right? 90+% of success is perspiration, not inspiration. Work is called work for a reason. It may be repetitive, it may be boring at times or tedious, but that's the work. So having the discipline to do something when you don't feel like doing it is a critical mindset thing. Discipline comes from motivation. Your discipline is what you're going to do and doing it. And then your motivation is your why you're doing it. So what is the why to what you're going to do for a given day? Okay. Is it because, you're getting a paycheck at the end of the week? Well, for most entrepreneurs, that's not the case. We talked a little bit earlier before we started the podcast about tools for motivating oneself. And I will give you one of the best ones that I ever heard in my whole career, which was that you can have the pain of doing something now, or you can have the pain of regretting not doing it later. It's the pain of action versus the pain of regret, the pain of the work versus the pain of regret. And the best way I have ever found to motivate myself is to look at what's going to happen if I don't do this today, if I don't get my work done today, whatever it is. I'm going to lose these opportunities. I will be mad as hell at myself for not getting it done. My agent will be mad at me. My client will be mad at me. Some external force is going to be exerted upon me that's going to make it unpleasant for me. That, for me, has always been the number one thing that I found motivational. The second thing is just internal drive, right? You have a desire for something, but sometimes desire flags, and that's why you need something else to kick yourself in the butt and do what you're supposed to do, even though you really don't feel like doing it. And maybe it's even making you anxious to think about doing it, like cold calling for salespeople. Lots of anxiety. Something that I did early in my career. We would do 100 dials in a day. 90 times you'd get hung up on. You would talk to about 10 people. 3 of them would say, well, call me back later. 6 of them would say no. And 1 would give you an appointment to talk further, to really go into your services with them. And what I started to realize that was, okay, if I have 10 follow-up appointments, I typically get 1 client. So 9 out of those 10 don't even become a client. That was the level of rejection that I had in my field. But that 1 client was typically worth several $1,000s to me. Let's call it $3,000 or $4,000. So I just did the math, and I figured out that I made $5 every time I dialed the phone. So I think that helped motivate me in my career, finding a way to look at it that made the pain less painful. Each time I picked up the phone and dialed it, it was $5, whatever.
I think what you're saying on the bigger scale is setting goals and then breaking them down into bite-sized pieces of how you get there. Because I think the biggest challenge for an entrepreneur is they don't even know, they might have a goal, but they don't know where to start. So what always helped me is if I have the goal of bringing in 10 new clients, I then need to ask myself, well, what happens to do that? Like, what are the actual money-making activities that I need to be doing on a daily basis to then move that forward. And then from there, then you can say, okay, on Mondays from 9 to 12 p.m., I'm going to be like, for me, it would be maybe creating content or scheduling emails or making sure our podcast, all of the like marketing outputs are in the calendar. And then on top of that, I live and breathe by my Google Calendar. I mean, whatever calendar system you use, but having things in my calendar and giving myself tasks, or even looking up tasks, or having a mentor who can like give you tasks,
Yeah.
or like joining a course or a challenge. There's so many challenges online these days for entrepreneurs where it's like, do a 10-day video challenge where you can like put yourself out. Like those are the little things that definitely helped me. Have a mentor or some sort of like guide that can tell you, break down your big goals into smaller bite-sized items. And there's actually a book, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It's called EOS. It's like an entrepreneurial operating system. The concept is you take these big rocks, which are the big goals, and then you break them into like pebbles or something like that.
Yeah.
And so each pebble is like a benchmark of where you want to go.
Yeah, we called it activity in my sales parlance. The key thing that a sales manager would look at is your marketing activity. What were your inputs? And we felt that if the person had the raw ability for the job, that if they just did the inputs, they'd get the outputs. It would just come with time, that it was just a numbers game in that sense. Time management is the management of tasks. So what are the tasks that are on your plate now? Your to-do list is what I personally call it, okay? And for me, that to-do list has to be constantly updated and maintained because new things hit almost every day and things get done almost every day. So, it's just a rolling list of things and it never ends, which gives no end of anxiety to people because your goal is to have all your work done, right? Well, there's always something that has hit. So how to manage your time is to look at your tasks, prioritize those tasks. Which of these are the most important? How long are they going to take to do? And how can I fit that into my schedule? So the way that I would handle it is I've got my to-do list and, I might have 2 phone calls on my calendar for Monday morning already. Usually on a Sunday night, I would take a look at my to-do list and I already know roughly how long the various things are going to take me to do. What I will do is prioritize them. I've used an ABCD system for prioritizing time management items. A is things that are important and urgent, usually something with a timeline. Like Hallie, you have to have the audition in by 5 o'clock today.
Yep.
Okay, that's urgent. You can't wait a week to do that one, right? No benefit to that.
Nope.
So you can't put it down on the list and let it pop back up later in the week. So important and urgent. A B item is either important or urgent, okay? So something might not be important, but it might be urgent. That's not as important as something that is important and urgent. So A, B. C is something that's not important and it's not urgent. Okay? You can do it whenever. And if you don't do it, you're also not going to suffer many consequences from that. The D is delegate or dump. Dump in the trash. Just you're not doing it for whatever reason. 9 times out of 10, I'm just dumping that because I don't have the time to get A, B's, and C's done, much less the D's. Okay. So you've got your A's, your B's, your C's. You've gotten rid of your D's. Now you may have 5 A's. So you may need to choose which is the most important, which is the most urgent of those 5 A's. Okay. Which one of these has the least negative consequences if I don't get it done? Which one of these items? Okay. Well, that might be A5. A1 is going to be the thing that this has to get done first. I need to get it done first. Now, hopefully it's not because you're just anxious to do it or you'd rather do it, you'd like to do it, right? It has to be something that needs to be done. So if I start my day at 9 a.m. and my first call is at 10 o'clock, well, my 9 o'clock thing is going to be my A1 item. I'm going to literally put that in my schedule for 9 a.m. that I'm dedicating an hour to it, and I'm going to try to have it finished by 10 a.m. so I can get onto my 10 o'clock phone call. Now, my 10 o'clock phone call is going to be a half an hour. So at 10:30, I'm going to be free again. Now I'm looking for A2. What's going to be my next item? And so I build my day like that. based upon what I've got in front of me and what's critical and, timely and all those kinds of things. So from a time management standpoint, I literally schedule myself because if I just say, okay, I'm going to try to get these 4 things done today, often I'm just not as motivated. Let's put it that way. I've given myself structure. I've created structure around my day that kind of forces me a little bit.
I just raised my hand. I don't know why I
Yeah.
did that.
Mr. Teacher.
Me, please. Yeah, so I have a question. Obviously, like, Dad, you have a company that has employees that you work for, or that work for you, and
Yes.
then clients that you work for that you have calls with, and you have all of these working relationships. I'm curious about, when you're a one man, one woman, one person business. And I mean, even I technically have people who work for me. I have a set of managers. So I have people that I'm interacting with, but I don't typically have like a set amount of hours that I need to be communicating with people within. Or I'm wondering, like, for people who do things that really don't have to be at a specific time in the day, or they have, another job. So say they have like 2 days out of the week where they're focused on their business away from whatever part-time job they do, or, full-time, whatever, to make their living as they start out. I'm curious what you think about, because my days can be so varied when I am, acting. I'm normally doing an audition in the afternoon. Sometimes I'm putting laundry in before I like go to tape, and then I'm taking it out because I'm at home. And I'm
Yes.
wondering if you think that sometimes for me, my brain gets really jumbled because I have a hard time separating my work tasks with my life tasks, my home tasks, because I am home. I'm in
Yeah.
this environment, and I don't have, I'm in my bedroom. Like, that's my dresser. I don't have this is my desk. Oops.
Yeah.
This is my desk. I don't have an office to go to. And I'm curious if you think that there's a benefit to dictating, like, these are my work hours, I won't do anything life-wise within it. Or yeah, I'm just curious. This is the first time I'm really thinking about, this, and realizing that sometimes my days feel really jumbled because I'm juggling a lot of different types of tasks and
Yes.
different tasks that have different designations within my life, like
Yeah.
different categories within my life.
Yeah.
I'm just curious and you too, Bridget, because you work from home. So yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
Okay. So, my first thought on that is, in a sense, this is where people who work in an office and work for someone else really have an advantage because they're not supposed to do personal stuff during the workday, right? Now, with the advent of remote work post-COVID, far more people are working from home than used to. And some of them, they've got their kids screaming in the background when they're on the phone with people, or that's become something that has had to become acceptable in the business world. Is somebody's working from home and you hear the kids in the background yelling or crying or whatever it is. So my advice to you would be, though, that you need to look at work hours as work hours. Laundry can be done in the evening. Laundry can be done in the morning. Laundry can be done on the weekend, right? Your work, if it's marketing yourself, for example, a lot of that you can probably do on the weekend also. So, it probably kind of balances out. But I think that you'd be more successful if you had a work versus home mentality. The fact that you work from home doesn't mean you do home stuff while you're working. Your home stuff is not during work hours, not when you can be productive during the day. You have to do it at other times. Other than things that everybody has to deal with. You got a doctor's appointment during the day. Well, you're taking some personal time to go to the doctor or the dentist or whatever. But laundry is a very good example, I think. If I had a salesperson who was taking time in the middle of the day to do laundry, I would say that person's looking for something to avoid doing their work. That would be my manager mentality coming out, and I'd be like, because they can do it later. Or they could have done it last night, or they could have done it, or, at 7 o'clock this morning. They could have gotten up and done it before work, but they're choosing to do it during work. Well, they don't want to do their work during work. Forgive me for having an old school manager mentality about that stuff, but lots of people, even who are self-motivated, find ways to blow off time and waste time. And time is your most precious commodity. As an entrepreneur, you're already stuck working more than 8 hours a day. Most entrepreneurs can't get by working 8 hours a day. And so, time you waste at one point is just time you're going to have to add on somewhere else, or you're not going to achieve your goals. So then you have the pain of regret, right?
I think I take like a similar approach to you, but a little bit more of a probably 21st century millennial approach, which for better or for worse.
No shock there.
No shock. So for me, because I love that I get to make my own hours, my mornings are very much my mornings. Like I might not actually sit down on the computer until like 9 or 10. I guess that's not that crazy, but I've done a lot in the morning. What I do try to avoid is doing things at home midday, because that distraction away from my like tunnel vision puts you off kilter.
Takes away your flow.
It does. The only thing I will do midday is go for a walk, but I find that that is a source of my creativity. So
Yes.
I definitely still put work first, like Monday through Friday. I definitely still have that mentality of like, I'm kind of in that circle in the vortex, but my actual work hours might shift and change, and I probably will not do something midday. The one thing I will say that has helped me a lot with time management is that Pomodoro method, where they did a study, which is 20 minutes on of like completing a task with like a 10-minute break or something like that. And they basically studied that within those 20 minutes, that you're really able to like get a task done. So I will set my phone timer for 20 minutes and like put that A1, as you'd said, Dad, task in, and I'll be able to get it done. We just distract ourselves. So that's my way of doing it. I think it's about finding your way, but sometimes to find your way, you kind of get bumper cart around in the beginning.
And listen, there are, for all of these various things, there are plenty of books and resources available to see how other people are doing it, and to learn and to test for yourself what can work for yourself. I'm telling you about things that worked for me. And I don't know that it would work for everybody. Some people might think it's really anal to put down hours and say, I'm going to do this during this time and that during that time, and that's my day. That's something that I need, because without the structure, I tend not to be as disciplined.
Okay, so tune in next week for part 2, because this is taking us way longer to talk about than we allotted for.
See you guys
Don't
next
ever
week.
let an Irish guy get the microphone.
He's got the gift of gab. See you all next week on another episode of the Financial Dad Podcast.